Okay, so now we look at how enzyme lowers activation energy. Okay, so if we look at the definition of enzyme, tadi kita dah discuss for enzyme, it is a globular protein that act as organic catalyst, okay, which speed up the rate of reaction by lowering activation energy. So actually, how enzyme lower activation energy? So first of all, you have to know what is the meaning of activation energy. So activation energy is amount of energy that reactant must absorb before a chemical reaction will start. Okay, so reactant in this case is substrate. Okay, so maksudnya dekat sini, bila reaction berlaku, yang mana substrate ni, okay, dia punya, kita kata dia punya tujuan dia adalah supaya substrate can be convert into product. Okay, so the conversion of substrate into product, it needs energy. So that one we call as activation energy. Okay, so what happened to the bond within substrate? So the bond within substrate will be break. So that's why substrate can convert into product. So the energy, okay, which is needed, okay, to break the bond within the substrate. So that one we call as activation energy. Okay, so that's why if you look at this one, this energy required to contact the reactant molecule so the bonds can break. Okay, so if you look at this one, in the presence of enzyme, so what happened to the activation energy? So it will offer an alternative pathway for the reaction to occur with a lower activation energy. So means that bila dalam keadaan di mana reaction tu ada enzyme, so enzyme ni boleh membantu supaya the activation energy can be lowered. Okay, so since activation energy is proportional to the difficulty of breaking the bonds in the substrate. Macam yang saya katakan tadi, okay, untuk membolehkan substrate convert to product, so it needs activation energy. So bila ada energy, so dia akan menyebabkan bond within the substrate to be break. Tapi bila ada enzyme, enzyme ni membantu supaya, okay, process of breaking of bond within the substrate tu, okay, ataupun kita kata energy needed, okay, to break the bond within the substrate to be lowered. Okay, so that's why if you look at here at transition state, the enzyme substrate complex is formed. So what happened? It will provide favorable microenvironment which is conducive to a particular type of reaction. So does the transition state, okay, or we call as enzyme substrate complex, reduce the amount. So the keywords is here. It will reduce the amount of energy that must be absorbed to break the bond in the substrate so that reaction can occur. Okay, so kalau kita tengok based on this graph, okay, so this is reactant. So reactant here refers to the substrate. Okay, so this is the transition state. So kalau awak tengok based on the explanation here, the reactants A, B and C, D must absorb enough energy from the surrounding to reach the unstable transition state, okay, where bonds can break. So at the transition state here, okay, so apa yang berlaku kepada reactant or substrate, it must absorb enough energy. So barulah dia akan, kita kata, to reach the unstable transition state where the bonds can break. Okay, and then here is the product. So after bond have broken, so new bond form, so it will release energy to the surrounding. Okay. So if you compare, okay, the graph of activation energy without enzyme and also the graph of activation energy with enzyme, so awak akan nampak grafnya berbentuk macam ni. So that's why yang ni awak mesti kena take note. Selalunya dalam soalan dia akan minta awak identify which is activation energy without enzyme and also which is activation energy with enzyme. So kalau awak tengok dekat sini, okay, so here is the energy of reactants. So yang tinggi ni, so this one dia akan represent activation energy without enzyme. So means that dalam keadaan tiada enzyme, so more energy is needed, okay, to convert reactant into product. Tapi bila adanya enzyme, so awak akan nampak activation energy yang diperlukan adalah lebih rendah. So that's why, sebab tu kita kata enzyme can lower the activation energy. So this is the difference lah, okay, in between the reaction yang mana, ataupun kita kata in between activation energy without enzyme and also activation energy with enzyme. So if you look at the reaction in both exergonic and also endogenic reaction, enzyme will lower the activation energy and speed up the rate of reaction. So yang ni pun adalah sebagai analogi dia lah. Okay. So ni adalah activation energy barrier. So bila dia punya barriernya adalah lebih tinggi, so reaktor ni dia akan perlukan lebih tenaga lah. Okay, untuk melepasi kita kata energy barrier ni untuk menghasilkan produk. Tetapi bila dia rendahkan, okay, bila adanya enzyme, enzyme ni dia akan lower the barrier. Okay, so that's why kurang energy diperlukan. Okay, untuk convert reactant untuk jadi produk. So ni dari segi analogi dia lah. Alright. Okay, so if you look at the explanation here. Okay, so let's say if the question asks you how enzyme lower activation energy. So di sini ada beberapa point yang awak mesti kena ingat. So yang penting yang point yang color merah ni lah. Okay, so the first one, it will bring substrate together in correct orientation. Okay, and then the active site is in closed fit. Closed fit mean it will exactly complementary of flexible to the substrate and bind to the substrate. Okay, which is it will bringing the substrate together into proper orientation for a reaction to occur between them. So the keywords here is, okay, it will bring substrate together in correct orientation. And then what happen? It will facilitate the breakage of all bond within substrate. Okay, so yang ni saya nak awak faham. Enzyme not break the bond, but it will facilitate the breakage of all bond. Facilitate ni dia cuma membantu. Dia akan menyebabkan berlaku breakage of bond adalah energy. So that's why bila ada enzyme, enzyme ni akan membantu supaya okay, activation energy can be lowered. So yang ni awak jangan tertukar lah. So it will facilitate the breakage of all bond within the substrate. Mesti kena ada perkataan facilitate. And then the enzyme may stress and bend critical chemical bond. Okay, so thus the bond in the substrate are weakened to facilitate the formation of bond between the substrate. Okay, so the keywords here is, first, it will bring substrate together into correct orientation, and then it will facilitate the breakage of all bond within the substrate. Okay, so the bond within substrate are weakened. Okay, so it will facilitate the formation of bond between the substrate. Alright. Okay, so this is the diagram that shows the mechanism of enzyme action. Okay, so let's say this is enzyme with the active site. So this is the substrate. So when substrate bind to the active site of enzyme, so it will form enzyme substrate complex. Okay, so dekat sini lah yang akan menyebabkan, kita kata dekat sini, okay, this reaction dia akan menyebabkan enzyme ni dia akan facilitate, okay, the breakage of all bond within the substrate. Okay, and then the binding of the substrate and enzyme places stress on the glucose-fructose bond and the bond break. So that's why product will be released. Okay, and then the enzyme here can be reused again. Okay, so this is about activation energy. How enzyme lower activation energy. Okay.